On this episode of Robe Chats, the podcast.
My background is I'm a tech guy. They are some of the nicest and most loyal people I've ever met in my life. As long as they'll have me, I'll always do their show.
Lighting designer, Tyler Shapard. Welcome back to Robe Chats, the podcast. I'm your host once again, Brian Matthews. We are recording again today from Soundcheck Nashville. Behind the scenes, helping me out engineering the podcast is my good friend Edwin Silva. Edwin, how you doing today?
I'm good.
All right, Edwin's always doing good, so thanks once again for the help back there. Excited today to be joined by a very world-renowned lighting designer, Mr. Tyler Shapard.
I don't know if I'd call it world-renowned, but I've been very lucky to be with a band that just happens to be worldwide now.
Yeah, well, the work you're doing is amazing. I know we've done some work on we've done some PR with Robe together with you, and the shows you've been putting out are amazing. So thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Anytime.
Well, kind of. I'll just start at the beginning. The thing that we like to do with a lot of designers is just kind of get the story of how you got to be in this kind of field, how you worked your way up to working with 21 Pilots. Kind of give us that background.
I got very lucky. I had a lot of mentors that I still keep in touch with today that helped me through. But, my background is I'm a tech guy. I started as an LED guy, and I was working at a VER at the time. They got a job there, and I was just thinking how am I going to break into this industry? Is I guess you got to learn the gear. I started there and kind of just worked really, really hard. You got to kind of say yes to everything and do the low man on the totem pole stuff. And eventually they're like, hey, we have this tour. It's this band nobody's ever heard of. Do you want to do it? But you got to learn lighting and you got to run the media servers and you got to build the risers and you got to do, load the truck, do all this other stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure. Who is it? And they're like, it's a band called 21 Pilots. Nobody knows who they are. And I'm like, sure, great. Let's do it. I mean, I'll do anything to get on the road. And I got out there, and the camp was very small, a lot of friends and stuff, and worked really hard. And was calling my mentors, just asking them, how to do things constantly. I was very, very lucky. And eventually, one day, I went to school for video direction, so I thought okay, if this band makes it, I can become the video director. And so, I kind of stuck with it, and there's definitely times where, you work really, really hard. You do more than what your job, is supposed to be for the good. You're trying to push this movement forward so it can, be a bigger thing to in turn benefit you in the back end, and trying to make a job for yourself. And eventually, the guy who was running the lights, he was just a friend of the band. He was like, I kind of want to do this branding side of this. Is like, do you want to run the lights? And I was like, sure. And so there was a European tour where I ran one song a night, and just kind of that's what it was. I ran the song called Car Radio. It was the easiest song ever. I ran it once every night so he could go, because they were filming that song. They were filming that song in every venue during Europe. And it was going to be this big, promotional thing about the show for the next tour. And so I'm running the song. I'm thinking it's awesome. Well, side note, we got robbed in Paris, and all the video footage from that got stolen. So it never came out. So, I was bummed because it was, the only footage that I had of me doing anything, because I was like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And so, he's like, oh, man, you did a really good job. I don't want to be the LD anymore. Do you want to be the LD? And I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I mean, I was like, they knew, where I was at and stuff. So, so I kind of took that on, and there was some really, beneficial people, in my early career. Patrick Eaton, who's like with Fuse now, I think was very, very helpful. He's a mentor to me. Even to this day, the guy I could call about anything. I mean, I remember calling him like in Europe when he's asleep, like, dude, I can't get the MA node to work with the console. And it's like, oh, it's an IP thing. Like, you don't know until you know. And Tony Macri gave me a chance. I started out working for a company called Concert Investor years ago. So Daniel and Justin gave me an opportunity. I worked through that. I would say one of the biggest people who really helped me was also Sooner. She's the first person who ever taught me how to be an LD. She programmed our first show for the most part.
Yeah.
And like taught me how to do it like day in, like the actual, for like what does an LD do for the day? Like focus and stuff. And there's many other people. So I just kind of stuck with it. And, the hardest part was the band had so much growth. The hardest part in my career was there was a point where we needed to hire a video director where, well, every camp is designed differently. And in our camp, like that kind of falls under me where, most of them were not designed that way. That might be its own thing. And so it's like, I kind of felt like I'd be taking a step backwards because I'd like made a pioneer role into the creative with being the LD and one of the designers and stuff, what it turned into. And so I had to hire somebody to do essentially my dream job,
right,
which was really weird, and I always can say like, oh man, I could do it. I probably couldn't do it now. You know what I mean? Like I just out of practice, but it's a weird thing to like have the opportunity and be like, no, I think I'm going to, like I went down this other road to get over there, and I actually decided to stick in this other road.
Yeah.
And I think like something that you should tell people who are trying to get started is, try not to say I'm a lighting guy. Try not to say I am a carp, I am a video guy, I'm automation, I am a rigger. You want to be everything. And because I did that, that's how I became a designer, because I know enough about every aspect of every part of the show to design it and to go get it down far enough down the road to understand it technically. And then I call the people who are the masters and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Theoretically, it should work from the basic knowledge that I know of how this works. What problems am I going to run into? Oh, hey, you're never going to be able to hang that much weight in this bay. Okay, well, how's another way to do it? Okay, well, you would, just change this and this and you're fine. You don't have to be a master at all these things.
Yeah.
But you do have to know, a little more than scratching the surface in it. And I think that is probably the key to my success,
Being able to communicate with everyone sort of in the concert family.
I try to tell people, especially people starting out, I try to tell them, is like, I hope that you never have to work for free. But sometimes your experience is important. Like, it's like what chicken for the egg, like can't get the job unless you have the experience.
Right.
Can't get experience unless you have a job type deal. So, but I tell people like, don't ever work for free, but like if you can find value out of whatever you're doing, then you're not working for free. And that's literally what happened. Like, I took on all these roles. I didn't get paid for these roles, but I took on all these roles when I first started because like, someone had to do it. And I learned all these things, and it stayed with me all this time. I kept building off of that knowledge I had, and it gave me the tools to do what I'm doing now. I didn't know at the time that's what was happening, but it gave me all the tools that I know now, to be able to design, basically, Yeah. And that's how I became a designer. It wasn't because I'm just a lighting guy, because just being a lighting designer doesn't get you very far if you don't know rigging, or you don't know staging, or you don't know like how it loads in around video and audio. That is the key. If you want to be a designer, that is it. And you need the basics, the fundamentals of all those aspects.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Coming from that video side that you came from, and then getting that shot to do the one song per night, and then kind of and building from there. What was that learning curve like? Because I've sat in front of a console, right? And there's numerous consoles out there.
This is before timecode, by the way. Well, before we used timecode, at least.
So what's that learning curve like for somebody coming from the video world to be able to sit in front of a console and understand its language and its, where all the buttons are and what they all do? How was that learning curve for you?
I was very lucky. When I went to school, I wanted to be a video director, which also helped me calling spots as well. Everyone tells me I call spots like someone would call cameras, which is hilarious because I've never listened to myself call it. You know what I mean? But it's just funny to hear be like, oh man, it sounds like you're calling cameras. And I don't know. That's the way I do it. But yeah, when I went to school, I realized that I went to Middle Tennessee State University. I have a great program there. And I had realized that, not every program has the ability to touch equipment. And they have a good enough program where they had a video switcher there, like a high-end one that you could touch and use and learn it. And so my thought was, if I learned this video switcher, because anyone else who wants to do this doesn't have this at their fingertips, if I could learn this video switcher, then I immediately am going to have a job tomorrow because, whoever has the video switcher needs someone who can run it. And there can only be a select amount of people because, again, chicken for the egg. Mm-hmm. You don't learn it unless you use it, and you can't use it unless you have it. So I learned the video switcher. And while you're learning the video switcher, you're learning basically order of operations and macros. And that's how you build everything. That's how when you want to do a star wipe, you got to build a series of events that have to happen, boom, 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 for that to happen on the screen. Well, when I moved to start running, also I'm a drummer, been a drummer for 20 years, so a great time. So when I moved over to the lighting console, obviously it was very easy, but MA can be extremely intimidating because of how customizable the show is. It's you open a fresh show file and there's just nothing there. You have to build everything, unless you have obviously a user profile. And I think it just, the order of operations were very similar. I was able to say, okay, power is another great example. Like power is the same for everything, but you still have to understand power. But to calculate how many amps you draw, it's the same whether it's video or lighting or audio or anything. And I think it's the same thing as the console. Like there's a series of events that I want to happen, and this is the order I want them to happen in, and this is the time I want them to do them. And so I took like what I'd learned, my experiences of order of operations and macro building, and kind of applied that to the console. And obviously there were things you have to learn, but I'll tell you this, the only real way to like learn to be an LD is you're going to have to go into a sink or swim moment, and you have to swim. You just can't, there's just so many things during a show you just can't learn via previs. You want to, but you can't. I don't know how to explain it. You just kind of have to do it. So I was very, very lucky to be in a position where I could run 1 or 2 songs a night and get my feet wet and just understand intensities, in previs, you're going to run your front light at 100%. I might, if I have, a very bright, wash, I might be running at 10% tonight, but I've always slammed it up to 100 on, say I was running it back on previs. Well, the idea, the thought process of when I get to this part of the song, I slam this up at 100 is fine. And while I'm doing other things, but now it's like, oh, wait a minute, I got to put it at 10. Okay. So you put it at 10, you could say, all right, let me store it in there at 10 so I can slam it at 100. And I was like, all right, well, what if we get to a brighter part of the set and we need more top end? Well, now you're topped out at 10. So now you have to rememorize every time you get to that part of the song or the chorus or whatever you want to do, that you're only pushing it up to 10 while you're doing your other things. It sounds like it's super easy, But and it can be for most people, but if you've never done it before and you're not used to it, you're going to get an artist that's like, it's too bright on stage. Like, this is too bright, like, or whatever, whatever they don't like. It will happen. And so it's just those experiences, I think, that makes it key.
I love how you were telling the story about, hey, you want to go out with this new band, 21 Pilots, because, I mean, they've blown up to be such a known band and entity throughout the world, playing festivals, huge festivals, playing sold out shows everywhere. Just talk about what that relationship has been like. That's a really cool part of the story of starting from them from ground one, right? And now working with them on the world's biggest stages. Just talk about the evolution of that relationship between you and the band.
I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. I don't think I really talk much about the band in an open setting often, just out of respect and privacy of those guys. But they are some of the nicest and most loyal people I've ever met in my life. And, as long as they'll have me, I'll always do their show. They are brothers to me. You've been through kind of everything. What you basically, I started when we all lived on one bus, and when I mean it when I say we lived on one bus.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And I think there are people out there who can be like, well, I was there, when so-and-so's band was in a van. Like, you look at Cosmo Milson.
Yeah.
I think he toured with Aerosmith in a van or something like that. And, I look at Cosmo and I'm just like, I want to be that guy. Like, that's the relationship I want to have. And I have that. And, those guys are some of my best friends. I talk to them just about every day. But we have a really special relationship. And, when we're hanging, we're hanging. And when we're working, we're working. And there are many videos out there of Tyler yelling at me from over the PA about something, And, I think people, I don't know. I mean, there's literally a YouTube video of him like yelling at me about something and, or multiple. And, the thing is I'm there to deliver, and he pays me for that. And when I don't deliver, those are the repercussions, and he expects excellence. And that's what I expect. I would say that I demand more perfection out of our show than he probably does. And he demands a lot. And he trained me that way. The only reason, I think no one ever wants to sit here and go, oh, I'm good. But the only reason why I am what I would say is good at my job, I do feel like I'm good at my job, but the only reason why I am good is because of him. That guy he knows fixture types. He knows what they can and can't do. He learns, he knows what Sacco cables are. He knows what is going on. You cannot get nothing past him. I mean, dude, we could go backstage and be like, what happened to that light? Like, I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, that light it was like missing off the top of my head. I was like, you know what I mean? Like, oh man, like I kind of rolled it down. Like, as I realized it was missing a little bit, he's like, yeah, just get it right the first time. You know what I mean? Like, and some of that is a little bit playful, but he's also like, but really get it right the first time, and things happen and it's whatever. And he's not like, I mean, if it's demanded a response, then, he'll tell me, but, very aware. And because of that awareness, it makes me be extremely aware of everything that's going on in that room. And you look at like, I don't want to bash like an artist, but, let's just say in my experience, country artists that's just not how they do their shows. And they are very just get in, make the money, and leave. And they would have no freaking clue if half the rig went out or something, most of them. So unless, someone told them and they said, oh, this looked bad. And then now they're all, crazy because someone told them it looked bad. But they would never know. And I think that is, possibly doing that genre, or it really, it's just my experience with that genre for the most part. But I think it's really safe to say, any artist who doesn't care, which is fine, and that's easy artists, but you have to be on top of it. Like as a designer, as the LD, you have to be in control. You can't let yourself slip, and because you have nothing pushing you. And just think about it, like, if you got nowhere to be or nothing to do, you're going to sit on the couch and watch TV all day? Yeah. But if you have somewhere to be at 2, well, and you got, something to do that day, you're going to get to it because you got to be somewhere too. It's like part of it. So I think it's very easy to, I don't work a day in my life, for the record. I don't work. Like, I do what I love, and it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful. I'm very, Toyman Pilots has given me the opportunity to do so many things in my life, and I'm very, very grateful of it. But I don't work a day in my life. And it's very, very nice. And I'm lucky. But not everyone gets that way. And I think it's just really, really important that you have to hold yourself accountable. Don't settle, even if you're the only one looking at it. Just don't settle, because find that, oh man, I can't figure that effect out. Like, sit down there and figure it out, because you're only shorting yourself, for the next show. So it's, it's kind of stuff like that. But
when you're in those moments where we're trying to figure out the shows and you're starting your whole design process, I find it interesting to hear different designers, they just have different ideas and workflows of how they come up with their designs and come up with their their visions for the show. What's your design process like? Do you mostly start with general looks? Do you start with, effects that you want to happen, or how does your design process go for you?
Well, speaking of design, I want to mention this. So I just started a design company with my design partner, Dane DeHaven. We were kind of just 2 guys. So I had picked up a show, an act called The Band Camino, and I was in the middle of 21 Pilots, and I designed it, and then like something came up. I had to be on the road, and I was like, Dane, can you go and take care of this for me? And I'd known him because he had done direct support for Mute Math, and when John Bellion became our direct support, they needed LD, and I was like, hey, Dane's a great dude, hire him. Dane and I think he'll be totally fine with me saying this, he's a nerd. This is the guy that over COVID, I drew a little bit during COVID. I did some stuff. We did the virtual event, so I was pretty busy, like designing, that was a whole thing, figuring that out. We did a lot of firsts there, but I did a lot of designing stuff on that, which he was with me on. But, for the most part, I was shut in playing some video games. I did some stuff. I built a rig and programmed a little bit and stuff, but Dane was writing macros for the console. Dane was doing all these crazy, he was like, yeah, it's fun. I'm like, dude, okay. And so he is between us, he is the technical guru guy, and you kind of have to have that, side of it for sure. We both like to go and say we can both do everything that it takes for the whole process. We both can do them, which is great. We're split, but I'm better and faster at some things, and he's better and faster at some things. But for the most part, we can both do it all. It's just easier to split it across. It's very hard to find someone else that can actually split the load. Like, I can program. We're programming a show right now, and I programmed half of it because he was on a vacation, and he's programming the other half. The other reason why we do that is because we have 2 different styles, and it makes the show feel more dynamic.
Experience.
It's you don't get that just same feel, same look. Plus, a lot of times on a rig, a mindset can get tired. So if you have a completely different look from it, he might approach he's just going to approach the way he wants to wash the stage differently, maybe from me. And that's going to have a completely different feel, as opposed to if this is the way I wash the stage, I'm going to wash it that way. You're going to try not to, but your mind keeps going back to, I'm going to wash the stage the same every time. So, that's one of the reasons why, being with the band for so long, what's challenging is like, you know how many times I've programmed car radio? Like,
Right.
how do you change the way it looks? It becomes very difficult. So it's nice to, always have someone else like, hey, well, like, what if we did this? Because you don't want to get away from the branding, but you still want it to be refreshed, So, we started with the band Camino. We did that show. And then I was like, dude, this is, I think this is like a really good partnership. I brought him out for the virtual event for 21 Pilots. That was great. And then we did this thing called Takeover Tour where it was an absolute nightmare. But we did 4 shows, one of each room size in 6 or 7 different cities. So we had to have a 500 cap room show, all different gear, all different show file in the same amount of time. 500 cap room show, like 2,000 cap room show, 4,000 to 5,000 cap room show, and then an arena show. And we did that night after night in 6 different cities on a tour. So, and I was running the lot. I mean, I was LDing all of them, but it was tough because the show file changed every night. The way your front light, the first 2 shows, you're kind of like at the mercy of the club. Of course we packed 5 pounds of, I'll say 5 pounds of stuff in a 10-pound bag. Because I'm sorry, wait, 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. That's the way. But it was very, very, very challenging from a logistical standpoint. And so we did that together, and then we did the most recent icy version of the TOP tour together, and some other Camino tours, and we did Ben Rector, we did some other stuff. So we started a company at the beginning of the year called District 5, and it's just over the last year we were looking at trying to bid on some bigger shows, and we realized everyone just saw us as 2 dudes. So we're like, we need to like have a company and a logo and stuff. So we're still kind of like, we were building a website, and then we got really busy, and so our website's like under construction. But because we were like, oh, it's downtime, we don't have any gigs, we'll build this website. And then like we haven't stopped for the last 3 months, so it's been crazy. But whenever it gets chill again, we'll go back to finishing out the branding. I think we have like 1 Instagram post or something because we were trying to do stuff. But so my new design process, now going back to your question,
Right.
My new design process is I typically, specifically on TOP, I typically build truss formations. It's the first thing I do. So I'll take the drawing, I will pull everything out. I'll leave in the stuff that like I know has to be the same. Like I know front of house footprint typically it needs to be the same. Our stage they typically like the standard stage look. They don't like to, like Blink's got the diamond and Panic's done the triangle. And I've messed with it a little bit, but I don't think they like that. I mean, we've always gone down that road, but typically I just start with a standard stage size. I don't look at 4 package or anything like that. I just start with truss formations and think of like, okay, how do I want this to look? And I, from a design standpoint, I try to use the least amount of custom things as I can because that keeps budget down. And I try to, because we have really great programming. So, we can rely on that. We don't have to have all these bells and whistles that some of these acts have. Also, though, and I don't mind saying this, our ticket prices are way lower than a lot of people in our market area. Tyler just doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to raise the prices on our fans, and that's great. That also hurts the budget. So I have to be very conscientious of like what that looks like and stuff. So like when you look at my show, I'm on a like $120 ticket price. Versus you look at Justin Timberlake, who's on $450 for the same ticket. So it's just not apples to apples. So you have to be really coherent. When we did Trench, the first version of Trench in 2018, I would say was like the masterpiece show. I mean, we had everything. It was let's call it an open checkbook. It wasn't, but like let's call it an open checkbook. When we did Icy, we did that for a third of what Trench cost. And I think artistically, Trench had all these gags, and it was crazy. And it was just like the show, like, dude, the show was crazy. Icy was a very artistic, different show. I mean, we made the whole like arena snow, like that's cool and stuff like that. So just very different. But I started with truss formations. I try to figure out like, how am I going to approach my video side of it. I don't really drop lights in it yet. Like I'm kind of just looking at like what I wanted to do. Am I going to have automation? How am I going to like figure out the technical side of it? And the problem with that is it can really curb your creative. You have to be really careful how technical you think early on, because you'll box yourself in and you'll never like open your mind up to like what could happen. There's a lot of designers out there that'll draw some really pretty stuff and they'll sell it to the band, and then they just let the production manager and the vendor figure it out, and they're like, this is impossible. Like this will never load in. You need 3 load-in days. And that's just, I try to pride ourselves off of that. So like, can we do something like that? Yeah. But I mean, that would mean you have an open checkbook, probably. You're just probably the top band in the world, which we were at one point in time. So we did that, But really when it comes down to designing, especially post-COVID, you're looking post-COVID, labor's up, vendor gear's up, they need a great show, a big show for less of what it used to cost. And the way to do that is stay away from the C word, which is custom. And so you got to figure out how to do it without that. And you want to keep your departments down. And, every department is a new line item of stuff and labor. Keep your labor down. So I try to approach it that way. There are different situations with clients where like, I won't, because that's what they've asked for. But 9 times out of 10, when I started drawing and I see like, hey, we want this many trucks, this is what we want to pull. This is what we want to pay. And, this is kind of what we feel like our bus layout's going to be. If I only know I got 4 techs and you look at it and you're like, okay, there's just not, like, in this day and age currently, there's not a ton of meat on the bone. So you're just trying to look at it that way and try to be creative. And because we feel like our programming's really good, we can kind of be a little more generic, but still create like really good looks. And I'm not going to like say that I was not paid to say this, but for years, the Mega Point has been my light that creates those looks for me. And so, I think I'm not sure what the next light's going to be for me. But I've managed to use the Mega Point through multiple cycles and not feel tired or get old. And it's just, it still is. I just think that my taste is starting to change a little bit of like what I want out of the light. But, I'm still, even with that, saying that, because I think I want a little thicker of a beam. I want a little more fuller of a light, which is not that it can't do that. It's just more of like a BMFL Forte look. But I'm still sitting there like, do I still put Mega Points on the show? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, do I still want to do that? Like, I put some on the show because I want to get that like animation wheel going and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's kind of the thought process. So the lighting is like one of the last things I drop in, because in the safest way possible to say it is like I feel like whatever lighting I have, I can do with it. So.
Yeah. Well, we don't mind the Mega Point plug. I mean, light's been out for what, 6 years now?
It's a great light. Absolutely great light.
I think people have pushed it, as far as they possibly can. But yeah, it continues to show up on rigs, and people really enjoy it. But when you're pushing yourself creatively, and you're spending those hours programming, and then you hit the road and you're on, a different continent, every other month, and you guys are out for so long, that can just be, mentally taxing and physically, wear you out. So when you when you come off the road, you know, and the tour's wrapped, you're back home. What's that like for you? What do you do to unwind? What's your free time like? What do you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, I play a lot of golf. Try to play as much. I mean, if I can, I'll take my golf clubs with me on tour and try to play on tour, but it's just so hard. It's so hard because, you know, when you tour, people don't realize this. I can't tell you how many times someone has been like, "Oh, you've been to all these places," and stuff. I was like, "Yeah." You know what I did on my off day? I slept. That's what I did on my off day. I didn't leave the hotel. You went to Paris? I tell you what, I've probably been to Paris over 20 times. I know for a fact that I never even saw the Eiffel Tower until like this 5th or 6th time. I never even saw it. And we had a couple off days because I was sleeping and just like, dude, I'm good. You know, I eventually did see it and went and stuff. Been there a couple times, but yeah, it's just like that's people who don't tour think touring is just like a big vacation.
Glamorous.
Yeah, it's like yeah,
you're hanging out with
20-hour days.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you're a rock star.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like no, dude, it's not like that. It's not like that. But yeah, I mean, you know, I just play a lot of golf, play hockey. I love playing hockey. You know,
how long you been playing hockey?
So
you start young.
I started young, and then I got hurt and I stopped playing. And it's really funny. I got hurt and stopped playing and started playing drums. I was kind of a little playing drums, but then I took it more serious. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, thought I was going to make it as a musician. And then my band broke up, and then I got mad.
What was the name of your band?
It was one of them was called Over the Threshold, and I think another one was called Some Will Be Saved. Terrible band names, terrible. But we thought they were cool. And then so I was really mad. I sold my drum set and was like, you know, I was going to like Motlow because I thought that, which is a community college, which is nothing wrong with that. But I was just like, wasn't taking college serious. And I was like, all right, fine. I'm going to go to a 4-year school. So then I go to a 4-year school, get in the video program. And that's like, it rolls itself out. Like everything happens for a reason. Yeah. But yeah, no, I just, you know, on my off time, I do like little design work, little stuff here and there. Obviously more now I'm working with Dane and stuff, but, you know, you did say something I do want to mention that's very interesting. You were saying like, you know, not many designers tour their shows anymore. I feel like at least, most people who tour their show, they might help in the design process, but they're probably not like the main guy, you know, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do think like I'm in a niche group of people who like I am the first drawing and I am the last drawing. I'm the final say on everything. And the problem with being that guy, and this is one of the like huge things about like Dane, even for example, is when I'm on the road for 2 years in a cycle, I run the same show for 2 years. I mean, yeah, we add a couple songs, take a couple songs out. Do you have any idea how much technology changes in our industry in 2 years? I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was cloning. When I left one cycle, cloning was like, you were command lining it in the MA. You're command lining it, 102 at 104, whatever. I don't even remember the command line because I now use the easier version of doing it. But I used to have it all written out. I remember I had a paper that Sooner had written out for me in her beautiful handwriting that I carried with me for like years that reminded me like how to clone because I sucked at writing command line stuff. And I got back and Dane, before we started working with each other, I was doing some command line stuff on one of those tours that I think he was in mute math for us. This might have been like 2015, 16-ish, maybe somewhere in there, maybe 17. And he's like, oh man, why are you doing it that way? Of course, he's the macro guy, so he's got all the tricks and stuff.
He's writing macros during COVID.
Right. And so I go to the menu and, that's another thing, because you're not supposed to, once you start a tour, they tell you do not upgrade software versions on your consoles. You keep it as long as you can. So I'm basically 2 years behind on a software version. So but you get back and you upgrade software versions and stuff like that. So now there's this cloning thing in the menu screen. I'm like, what is that? So I hit it, and like I don't know how to use it. He shows me how to use it. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. This is super easy. I go out for a year, come back, do John Belling with him. He's like, dude, you know the new cloning thing? I'm like, no, what? He's like, now you can clone like individual groups and presets and all kind of. So you press clone and you like pick the individual, like channel you want to clone only on that light. And I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like my mind's blown. And that's what it's like as a touring guy. Like if you're touring like one of the bigger shows that never change, they're the same all the time. I mean, I can only imagine that whoever does Billy Idol, that show hadn't changed in like 6 years. But I mean, if you don't take the initiative to learn the new stuff, the problem is you're on the road so much. Like you like, okay, I'm not going to do that on my off time, like on my 2 days off.
Yeah.
So it's really beneficial to have someone like him. And I would say now that my off time, now that I have something like him, like I don't have to worry about it as much, because I just know Dane's going to nerd out and just figure it out, tell me. But yeah, going back to your question, just, hang out. I mean, I will say this, it's crazy, but when I come back from a tour, that's when I do a lot of my drawings for the next show. Very, very weird. But usually on like the plane rides home or something, I will start the drawing for the next tour that might be 2 years, a year, however long. And I think it's because it's fresh.
It's fresh. Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I don't know why. I just get in this mood. But yeah, it's so weird. It's so weird. And that's really only a 21 Pilots thing. Everything else is contracted out, like, hey, we want a show, and then you draw it. You know what I mean? TOP is just like the everlasting, ongoing thing. So, I just kind of always drawing for that. And I think I would assume every designer has a bank of drawings that they haven't used, that they've drawn.
Ideas, concepts.
Yeah, like maybe that just they bid and someone didn't quite like it, or maybe it was too expensive. I mean, I have like, probably... I don't know. The problem is I would say it's like writing a song. And I only know that process because I'm really good friends with Tyler Joseph. But, like, I've seen him write a really killer song and then, like, take the verse out of that song and put it in another song. Well, obviously that first song is dead now, So, like, I've done things like that where it's like I've taken two different drawings I had and kind of mixed them together, and now they're both useless, essentially. You know what I mean? Unless, I think you never want to like rinse and repeat, but I will say in most shows, most touring shows, you're never ever going to see anything new. Here's the thing, from a design standpoint, the truck space hasn't changed. Still the same amount of trucks. The amount of trucks that you can load in a day, and now obviously you can have load-in days and all the other stuff. You can fly pre-rigs forward. But still, it's time. Only have so much time. Financially, you're only going to be able to pay for so much, and you can only carry so much labor with you. You can only get so much labor there. Okay? The roofs still hold the same amount of weight. That hasn't changed in the last, they're slowly updating, but it hasn't changed in the last 30 years. It's from the 80s. Or, oh, gosh, I guess it'd be 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways,
Time
still,
flies,
yeah. But most arenas were built in the late 80s and the 90s, and they were off of that spec. Most of them. I mean, there are definitely newer ones. I think the best arena in the country is the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Full grid, great load in, great VOMs. I mean, good sight lines, spots are in good place. You can see everything. I mean, it is the best arena to do anything in my opinion. Good back of stage, really open. It's all central. It's not super spread out. It's all like right there. Great catering area. Buses are close. It's just it's really well thought out arena. And then you have the arenas that aren't good. But 9 times out of 10, yeah, you know how to know if arena's good or not?
No.
Does or a venue. And I'm probably going to catch a lot of hate for this, but this is how you from a
Be controversial, Tyler.
from a touring person of like just purely just a load in. Like a load in is a load. Here's the criteria: is a load in or load out going to suck? Okay, how do you know if a load in or load out is going to suck at a venue?
How?
Because the average person knows what it is. 9:30. Well, 9:30 is actually not that bad. 9:30 stage is just really weird. But Red Rocks, the Forum, MSG. I mean, these are like, United Center. Like, I mean, yeah, United is not as bad. It's just its push is terrible. So you got to go up like 2 sets of ramps. And it's like a 120-yard push from the docks. I think there's only like 3 docks there too. But, you look at those venues specifically, and you just like, if the average person knows what the venue is, like, oh, I want to go see a show in Red Rocks. Like,
I'm going to see a show in Red Rocks.
Who are you going to see?
Dispatch.
Okay. Here's my take on Red Rocks. First off, if you're going to see a show, okay, unless it's designed like a toured amphitheater show, if you're going to see a show, never go to an amphitheater because there's wind restrictions. You don't have haze control. There's so many things you cannot control that they might not be able to do that night. Also Red Rocks is DB limits because of it's on a national park, and they can't shoot confetti. They can't shoot streamers. There's a lot of things you can't do in that venue. Now, is it beautiful? Yes. What do I want to see at Red Rock? I want to see like John Mayer. Something that I'm sure John Mayer has great production. I've seen John Mayer a couple times, but I got to be honest. There's only a few people that I can shut off for. You know what I mean? You know how like if you're a lighting guy or something, you go to a show and you're just ruined. You would imagine everyone's got to be like that. Like whatever your field is, you look at, say you're an accountant and you look at a QuickBooks, you're like, oh, this is terrible. You know what I mean? What's like, I'm not an accountant. You know what I mean? Like whatever. But
First thing I look at every time I go to a concert, the rig.
Right, exactly.
First thing.
Exactly. And you can't shut it off. And like you're watching, you're enjoying it, and you're like, oh, that cue kind of looks, it's not great. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah.
You can't, like you don't want to do that, but you're doing it. And there's only a couple artists I can like shut off for. John Mayer is one of them. He's just unbelievable. Just as you listen to his album, you're like, okay, like he's great, but he's not. You don't understand how good of a musician he is. And I couldn't tell you what was what rig they had when I saw him, but I went and saw him in an amphitheater. Why? Because I don't care about that. I did not care. If you went to come see my show, our show is crazy always. But if you're going to see the show, what you're paying for, you're not getting what you're paying for at a venue, at a amphitheater, because there are restrictions that we just can't do stuff about it. And that's not our fault. Like, that's just the way it is. And so if you're looking at the show and they're doing all amphitheaters, well, then you're fine because it's designed for an amphitheater run. But if it's like one amphitheater dropped in a bunch of arenas, I guarantee you there are going to be aspects of that show that's not going to happen. If it's a production heavy show, that's not going to happen because, Red Rocks, they're normal. You know what the normal win rating at Red Rocks is?
No. Never been.
I'm
excited to go.
It sits at like 25 miles an hour, like down in the hoop. It's like, you know what the normal like win rating for like a crank up car is or a video wall? Like 17 or 18. So you're landing walls like that if you get a bad gust of wind. I think it's gotten a lot better now that like the row 80% and 30. They've done a lot better on doing the wind stuff, on having the transparencies on some of the video walls. So those are probably not as bad. But like, from an engineering standpoint, when you do your crank up carts, because a lot of people run those now, they're probably only wind rated for like 20 miles per hour, maybe. And then, because everybody wants to be higher. Everybody wants to be taller. So the taller they go, the more outriggers you got to have, the more wind rating you got to have. So it's just one of those things. Like, my personal opinion, I don't care to see shows at at amphitheaters because I want to watch like the production and stuff if I'm going to a production heavy show. So, probably people who are listening to this podcast probably all know that, but that's the take for any of the young LDs out there. If you're going to go to a show that everyone knows the venue's name, and you have to load it in, just be ready for a long day. Be ready for a long day.
Be flexible.
But I tell you what, man, like, Chicago crowds, Aragon Ballroom, probably one of the toughest, very tough load in. Just because you got to go up the elevator, get stuff in that room. Very weird room, but probably one of the most electric rooms to ever see a show is Aragon Ballroom in Chicago. You ever been there?
No.
Oh man, it's just first off, people who go to shows in Chicago are just different type of people. They are just crazy. They're insane, and then that room, I couldn't tell you what it used to be. I think it was a lot of things, but it's a very, very unique room. If you ever get the opportunity, that is one that has a bad load in, and it's a pretty rough day, but it's like it has a payoff. Red Rocks has a payoff. I'll tell you that. All those shows have a payoff, but that one is the one that, like, that when that crowd shows up, you're just like, this is insane. Like, I can do a whole tour and I could do a whole tour, and you could probably show me, if you took away all the identifying factors and you put a camera on the crowd, I could probably figure out I could probably narrow it down to find Chicago. It's just insane. Every band I've ever done goes to Chicago, and it's insane. I don't know what it is.
It's just the people of Chicago.
I think so. I think it's that, it's something like Fall Out Boy from there or something like that. Or maybe there's a rock radio station up there that like breaks a lot of like rock artists or something. But there's just something about that area, which is crazy to me. I don't know why it's Chicago, but it is. Blackhawk fans. Ugh.
Now you're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah.
You won't get in trouble for saying stuff about country music artists, but you say stuff about Blackhawks fans.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's something about that fan base is insane.
Yeah.
And I've seen it across multiple acts. So it's not just like you're like, oh man, you only know 21 Pilots. It's like, man, no, it's like that. But
one of the things I really like that you've hit on is this camaraderie, or this brotherhood that exists between, designers, when you guys are helping each other out and, helping giving each other tips and feeding each other, tricks of how you might be able to do things. I know that you gave one of our guys, David Gonzalez, a few tips on the Grand and May one time, and just talk a little bit about that camaraderie that exists between, talk about Sooner, and you talked about the guys from Concert Investor. Just talk about that brotherhood that exists between you guys in this, because it's a big industry, but it's a small industry. There's a connection between people in this industry.
Yeah, I know. I think that there's a couple of things you have to like say first before you really get into that. First off, festivals, everyone's trying to help everyone, but there's a hierarchy. And, when you go in, everyone is going to be on the up and the down. You never know who's going to headline the next night, or in a year or whatever, So you don't really want to go in just kind of like screwing everybody, basically. But there is a world where it's like, you have to understand that I work for my artist, not yours. I have to do this. And these are the rules, and this is what I've been told to do. But outside of that, I can help you with every other thing. We can move, I'm going to try to do what I can. Some artists are a little more forgiving than others. And most of the time, it's probably not dictated from the artist, but it's really pushed out to just like, that market has to have a really big impact for that artist. There's so much of a show. Like, when I talk to our manager and we're looking at shows on, do I want to bring in extra gear or not? I'm like, what does this show mean to us in this market? And be like, we really need to like make sure that this looks good. And I'll go, okay, well, I might, I have some extra things that I've designed that go into the show. And, let's say that those have an extra like $15,000, $20,000 like additional fee to be brought in to be locally sourced. So I'm basically looking at him and I'm like, do we want that at the show or not? For me, it doesn't matter whether we do it or not, but it's a financial thing. So I need to know like what kind of show is this? Is this a show where you put your head down and we're just going to get through it? Or is this a show where like, no, we need to be what everyone talks about walking away from this? And that rolls into what liberties I give people also on that same day. If this is my like, hey, we got a ton of crap on the stage. The reality of it is like, if you're whether it's me or anyone else, like I've been direct support many times. The headliner is the headliner. It's their show. It's their stage that night. And that's the way it is. Even like in a co-headline situation, that's where it gets really sticky. No one likes a co-headline situation. It's just a fight the whole time. Fight over who gets the best mixed position, the best monitor position, and all that stuff. But 9 times out of 10, everyone's super cool. They're just trying to do their job for the best of their ability. And there's also this like unspoken like hierarchy, like I said, like, well, it's co-headline, but they play last. You know what I mean? So like we might need to collaborate on what the rig is, but they're going to get the best mixed position. That's just the way it works. And anyone who doesn't respect that they're just being difficult. They know they're just being difficult. And there's a world where like, hey, can we share, they're going to try to pull on that rope because they get paid by the artist. That's their job, to get as much as they can until they can't get any more. You have to respect that. Like I respect that when anyone asks the world for me and they keep asking, they keep wanting, and, but there's a world where it's like, like I totally respect that. Yes, I'll give this to you, blah, blah, blah. But you have to respect when I say like, no, I can't do that. Like, I just can't. Like, this is what I need to do my gig.
Yeah. And
because I'm the last guy to play and blah, blah, blah. So there are definitely worlds where, they say never burn bridges. So I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't like me out in that world, who would never tell me. I'm sure everyone has that situation. I'm actually like a super chill, nice guy. But when it comes to my artists, I'm going to do everything I can do to make my show the best without diminishing yours. Like, I'm not going in that to do anything to your show. I'm doing it to make sure mine's the best. Yeah. And every decision I'm going to make sure that whatever you need me to do does not hurt. It can never hurt my show. So I'm willing to do whatever it is that you want to do until it impedes even a single percent of, I'm not catering 1% of my show to yours, because that's what I get paid to do. You have to understand. If you don't understand, that is kind of thing. There are a lot of people out there who understand that. Those are the people who are like, you really connect with. And then
because you can understand that and not take offense at it.
Exactly. Because I also know that when you headline on the next show, I know the rules. I know exactly what it is. I'm going to ask you for the same stuff. And, I hope that like, you're going to give me that same respect of like, there might be a world where I don't give you as much, but you give me more because it doesn't affect you. But there are also, there are petty people out there who are just like, oh man, well, I'm not giving them anything because they didn't give us. It's like, that's fine too. You know why? Because you're the headliner and you can do that. And supposedly, everyone is in this crowd to see you, and I'm just here to try to steal some fans. That's the way you got to look at it. All business. And after that, let's just get this done. Let's get it over with. Let's have a good time. I think everything that I'm mentioning is like the unspoken, like a lot of people don't talk about that, but it exists. You know what I mean? It definitely exists. It's definitely out there, but they just don't talk about it. And maybe I'm just over analytical about it, but I think that's the world we live in. There's just like this side of politics that nobody like wants to like come forward, but it's like, that's the reality. There's no hard feelings. I just have to do my gig, and this is it, And I feel the same way about that as other people, and when it comes down to helping people, absolutely. If someone called me and was like, hey man, do you have the patches for all the shows? Like, absolutely. Here they are, you know. I was touring with Tony Caparelli, who does Billie Eilish. He's a good friend of mine, and we were both doing that. So Blink, well, back up, Blink couldn't do the Lollapalooza show, so we had 20 days to fill in the headline slots for Blink in March. And Billy was on one side, and Guy was doing Drake on the other side of us. And we were just kind of all moving around. And some of the shows were really put together. Some were not as much. I had to like really pull teeth to get the advance work. And I was talking to Tony like on one of the last shows, and I was like, you know, did you have such a problem getting this advance work? And he's like, no, dude, I don't have anything. And I'm like, dude, let me know what you need, and I'll get it to you. And he never did. He never asked me. I think he was like, yeah, I'll send you an email or something. Like, we never like really followed up that he needed it. But if he did, I mean, I would have sent it all over, all my patchwork and all this stuff that I'd already figured out for him. And that's kind of like the give and get. And I think from a headline standpoint, the reason why you want to kind of do that is because, you know, when I'm coming in after Billy, I want them to get off the stage as fast as possible. You know, I want them to move as fast as possible. I want everything to be good. You know, when I'm going to do it overnight and they tell me that, you know, somehow the direct support is weaseled away where they get overnight time, like as far as I'm concerned, I decide that. It's my overnight. But and that's a pretty cold way to think about it. But I mean, again, like I'm protecting my client. But 9 times out of 10, it's like, hey, can they come in after you? Do you know what time it is? Oh, well, you know, sure, if I don't get the rig till 2, there probably isn't going to be any overnight time. But if you're on the first night of the festival, then there should be. It's like, yeah, I want to give, you know, I'm going to give them everything I can freaking give them. Why? Because I want everything to be smooth for them, because one thing happens on that stage and everything starts to snowball and stuff like that. The reason why I talk so much about festivals is because that's the only time we see anybody. I never see people unless I'm at a festival. So I'll go years without seeing people unless I call them up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you'll go, you know, you might, you know, I had a guy the other day I saw in Europe. He got a resume from one of the younger LDs we've been training. And he was like, hey, is this guy good? I hadn't talked to that guy in, you know, I guess a year and a half at this point. And I was like, yeah, he's great. You know, I told him a little bit about him and stuff. And then, how are you? Pleasantries, you know what I mean? Whatever, okay. You ever in Nashville? You ever in Atlanta? Stop by. We'll see you. And that's it. And then what will happen is I'll see him on a show somewhere, and we'll just pick up right where we left off. You know, talking about whatever it is we're talking about, how we're getting screwed on what is or whatever, and it'll be the same thing.
Yeah.
But we'll have that, if he plays before me or if I play before him, we'll have the real business conversation of like, this is what you get, this is what you don't get, and, you know, I'm here to help. Oh, well, you know, like the front light situation isn't that great. Okay, I'll give you some of mine because I brought in some, but, you know, like, we just won't tell, you know, I'll give you some of mine because you're right, it sucks, it's terrible. And we didn't realize the sun's going down super early. I mean, that's the craziest thing, dude. We'll do some of these festivals. It's hysterical. We'll do some of these festivals and they'll trim the truss at 60 feet off the front of the stage, which, by the way, is right on the edge of the stage. So, like, your artist is right here. I mean, you basically got to push your artist back 30 feet, it feels like,
just to hit him.
And they'll put like Mac auras up there. And you're like, I'm supposed to stage wash an 80-foot wide stage with 10 Mac auras, and they'll put you know, nothing wrong with Mac aura. I'm just saying it's just not the light for that. You know what I mean? Not enough output there. And then they'll have, like, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a light that's just not good to be up there, you know.
Let's not piss anyone off.
Yeah.
General
I'm just
Acme
saying,
light.
I'm just I'm just saying like not a light that I would want for a special. You know what I mean? Like maybe a beam light or something that like some light that like doesn't even zoom wide enough. You know what I mean? You're like, what are you doing? You know, like, but that's the stuff you deal with. That is the stuff with other LDs and stuff that you're like, dude. You know,
gotta help each other.
Yeah, you'll be on a festival, a circuit, and you'll be like, bro, have you seen the rig for this, whatever show? And you're like, oh no, what are you going to do? And then what happens is really unique thing happens when you start talking to them. They'll be like, yeah, man, I think this is how I'm going to get around that. And they'll talk to you about it. And you're like, oh man, I never would have thought of doing that. You know what I mean? That's where that comes in. And that's why you always want to be open book, share, and do as much as you can. So I feel like, to sum that up, it's like I'm kind of saying like two things. I'm saying like, dude, do everything you can, but also like, you got to be kind of cold-hearted. And I think you just have to understand like there's a business side of it. And as long as you understand it's not personal, then it's fine.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you out on this next one. Just understanding where you've come from, of how you started with the band and you worked your way up, and now you guys are all over the world, and you're started your own company now, and you guys are programming other shows and doing other shows as well. Just looking back on your career so far, what is it that everybody kind of has their own thing that drives them or excites them, but what's that thing about this industry, about this job that really just, when you wake up in the morning, like you said you've never worked a day in your life because you love what you do so much. What drives that?
I'm very good at design the show, just all the aspects of like what it takes to do my job. And I think I do other bands. I mean, obviously, when, you can do that and make money, it's, money is a driving factor to always do stuff. I think there's always like a creative discharge, I guess, of that you want to kind of like, there are things, like there are looks that I just couldn't do on 21 Pilots that I kind of do. I get ideas I do on some other stuff. But specifically for 21 Pilots, since it's kind of like that is the show I tour. I don't really tour anything else. And I spend a lot of time working on that show. I've said this before, maybe not in a professional setting, but, our fan base is, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. 21 Pilots is an outlet for a lot of people to get away from a lot of things in their life that they just need a break from. And, technology has really ruined the aspect, like, I was probably bullied at one point in time, but at school, I think everyone probably at one point in time was at some point in their life. And unfortunately, they either learned from it and became a bully, or they suppressed it. It's usually how that works. And the difference is when we went to school, it ended at 4:00. There wasn't a phone. It didn't follow you home.
Yeah.
And it does now. And it took me a really long time. And I was like, I don't understand why there's so much mental health issues in our youth right now. And I think the 21 Pilots, a lot of their lyrics, a lot of their stances, they have a public stance about against suicide prevention is about that. And when I used to be a tech, and I used to work down in the pit, and when the guys go out in the crowd, I would put Josh's thing up there and help him up and hold his drum, put the water in their drum for the end of the show and stuff. And you see all these kids with their hands up screaming, and and I think this is at a lot of shows, but there's just, when you start seeing all their marks on their hands, on their arms and stuff, It's really like chilling. So I truly, truly believe that every show that I do with 21 Pilots, I truly believe we save one life. And that's enough for me to do it for the rest of my life. That's 100% true. I've always believed that ever since I've kind of understood that. I didn't understand. I got to be honest, like COVID really helped me understand mental health a little more. I think everyone had a dark spot of COVID. I was really concerned. I thought like basically my career was over. You guys probably could relate.
Absolutely.
I thought my career was over. I didn't know what I was going to do. How I was going to pay for anything. How I was going to feed my family. What was I going to do? I mean, I was get to a very dark spot. And that's when I kind of understood like a little more of, never had like a depression before, anything like that. I'd never experienced it before. Or at least I just didn't know that's, I mean, I guess I had, I just didn't know what it was. But I think it's very like, you know, touring is, I'll tell you this, touring is very dark. And, you know, it can be very lonely. And, you know, I think that everyone should definitely be open to talking to someone on the road. I hate to make it super serious, but I mean, that's just reality.
It's reality.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you can get to a very dark spot. You know, they say
You could lose yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eminem.
Well, it's funny because you brought up car radio earlier, and it's one of the songs that I identify with constantly because there's a line where he says that silence is violent, and it's so true because if there's one person in our office that's always keeping headphones on, it's me. And I know other people find it annoying, but there's either music, there's either a podcast on, there's something, because the moment it turns off, I get stuck in my thoughts, and then I go down a rabbit hole. And at the end, the question I always ask myself is, who am I? And that's when it gets scary, especially during COVID. And you're thinking about all the things he was talking about. At the end, it was, I have 2 children. I have a wife. I have myself. I have a mother that I would love to provide for eventually. And at the end, it all came down to, who am I? What do I do?
Yeah.
What defines me? Is this job really it? Am I only valuable for what I bring to the table? And a part of you was also thinking about, I'm young, but I'm getting older. We've had this talk, Brian, multiple times over dinner. And I know Brian usually looks at me like I'm crazy, but I do get caught in my head sometimes. Sometimes I take the long scenic route home on the highway because as I'm growing, I'm also raising little ones. And I'm trying to do right by them, regardless of what was done towards me. And, you know, when I hear 21 Pilots, one of the dynamics you brought up with your partner that I thought was interesting was that he has another way of, you know, programming. And what I thought was interesting was when you listen to 21 Pilots, every chapter of your albums have been completely different. And even within the albums, there's high moments, there's low moments, there's moments that are just steady. And I could only imagine what a show like that looks like.
Yeah, one very unique thing that I know about Tyler is when he won't put a song on the album that he can't envision himself performing, which makes my job easier. So he's already has kind of idea of what it's supposed to feel look like. He doesn't really like, you know, he has always let me like do whatever I want for the most part. But he'll definitely let me know like this isn't right. This isn't it. I've only ever reprogrammed one song ever for him, like we missed. And honestly, it wasn't even a miss. It was, we were performing Cancer, which is I think it's a My Chemical Romance cover, I think. But he like redid it and we were performing at the B stage and I just had some lighting looks going on. It was really chill. It's about cancer. And he was just like, you know what, man, let's put a spot on me and just let me go. And I mean, I don't know if that counts. I mean, technically it does, I guess. I just went, cool, boom, and turned it off. But that's one thing that I've always been pretty prideful of is like he's never like totally made me like go back to the drawing board and like say like this song is completely wrong, redo it. And I think it's because
you understand.
Well, it's that, and I think he understands that when you box someone in creatively, and say it's got to be this, and this, you're starting here. You know, like looking through, you know, like tunnel vision, like already of like, okay, this is what we're creatively I have to be here. You know what I mean? Where like, you know, if you let someone just go, you know, you don't know what they're going to show up with, and then you try to like just tune that, you know. But going back to what you were saying a second ago is, you know, what made me realize all this was I was driving for Amazon, and I went through every podcast and album of everything ever, and you know, during COVID. Eventually, I just ran out of stuff to listen to, and I would just sit in that car, in that van by yourself the whole time for like 16 hours, and it just destroyed me. And it's just, you start thinking about stuff, and you just, it's, yeah, you know, the line "quiet is violent" is you know, and he sits in silence. I mean, it hit home. So, and that's when I figured, that's when I realized it's but for the record, I'd always thought that, you know, we save the life. I should say we save a life every show for years, ever since I saw the wrists and stuff. I just never understood it. I didn't understand how you could be so young and have that many problems. And then, you know, naively, someone pointed out to me about how like they can't get away from it. Just never stops, you know. And I was just like, I don't know how to fix that, you know. I think I love to talk politics and everything with people, and you know, I have a solution for everything in my mind. How do you fix that? You know, I don't know. I think, and I think the only thing you can do is manage it. And that is what 21 Pilots, to me, I think attempts to do. And so that's what gives me my creative drive. That's why I do what I do. You know, that's, you know, I mean, very, very lucky that they pay me for my job. Yeah. So
that's awesome, Tyler. Thank you. Man. Thank you very much for opening up about that. I mean, that's, you know, that's a tough topic, and it's one that needs to be discussed. So thank you very much for talking about that. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us today, Tyler.
Great.
This has been a great podcast, and we're very thankful that you decided to sit with me and Edwin for a while. And I will let you know, this is the most Edwin's ever spoken on a podcast. So you got Edwin to open up and speak. So I was
holding my tongue the whole time because there was so many, and you know, there was interjections that I wanted to get in, but I was like, Brian's busy, he's doing his thing. But I was just curious about 1,000,001 things, and I was just like, let me focus on the cameras. But yeah, I kind of wanted to. But, you know, I tend to not speak at all. I just say hi, and that's about it.
Well, I'm glad.
You got Edwin to open up.
I'm sorry. I'm a talker, so I'm sorry if I went too long. But
no, you're good.
A time limit
it's awesome.
On these things. Yeah.
It's awesome.
This is great. So thank you all for joining us once again for Robe Chats, the podcast. Thank you once again to Tyler Shapard and my good buddy, Edwin Silva, who opened up with us today. Thank you very much, Edwin. You can find our podcast on all your standard podcasting platforms, and you can also watch us on YouTube. And we'll say goodnight by saying, may the light always shine your way. You can make it the Robe way. Have a good night.